Hello, friend. Thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today, let's spend a few minutes with Cakes and Ale by W. Somerset Maugham. This book was originally published back in 1930. I listened to an audio edition of this book, and it was narrated by Neil Hunt. It was very enjoyable. So this is the fifth of the Maugham novels that I have read. I previously read Of Human Bondage, The Moon and Sixpence, The Painted Veil, and The Razor's Edge, and I have chatted all of those books here on my channel, so I will link to those chats down in the details below if anyone is interested in checking those out as well. I enjoyed all of them, but spoilers, as usual on my channel, this will be a spoiler-free chat, so I will chat a bit about this book, but I will not give away anything that I think would detract from a first-time reader's experience with Cakes and Ale by W. Somerset Maugham. Okay, so what is this book about? It's basically a satire of the publishing world or the book industry of England around the time the book was published, so around 1930. Our narrator is at this point in the book, as the book opens, he is a middle-aged, successful writer, and his name is Ashenden, William Ashenden. And he is approached by another writer friend of his, whose name is Keir, and he is asked to help him with this biography that he's been tasked to write about another sort of writer friend of theirs, Edward Driffield, who has recently passed away. Edward Driffield had become a literary sensation and been a very successful writer in his later life, and he's had this second wife, Amy. He has since died, and his second wife, Amy, has decided to task Keir with writing a biography that she intends to be a glowing portrait of the life of, the great author. Well, William Ashenden had actually known Edward Driffield and his first wife, Rosie, back in the day, back when he was a young man. He had been living with his aunt and uncle, and he had lived a very sort of sheltered life, and he got to know them. He became acquainted with them. They sort of took him in and, just talked to him and hung out with him. And he was just fascinated with them. At that point, Edward Driffield was a struggling writer. He and Rosie struggled with money, and they had lots of debts. They had to move around a lot. Rosie, I believe she had been like a barmaid, so she was kind of, not of the literary class or caste. And so, he thought they were wonderful people, and he was fascinated by them. Things changed, over time. Rosie is a really unique character, and Maugham, actually, Somerset Maugham, I read when I was prepping for this chat. I read up a bit about it, and he thought that Rosie, he loved this character of Rosie, and I think Cakes and Ale was one of his favorite stories to write because it has Rosie in it. So Rosie is a sort of character that we meet from time to time in the Maugham novels, and I'm going to talk more about that here in a bit. But like I said, she is a free spirit. As Driffield's career starts to take off, he has a book that's kind of a success, and that sort of takes him to the next step. He's starting to get noticed, by the literary establishment. Well, Rosie's not exactly an asset when it comes to going to these kind of parties where the sort of the elites are, the publishing elites, the critics, the sort of the influencers of the society that you need to have talking about your book, as well as the people in the publishing industry, attend these sort of functions, and the writer goes and needs to make a good impression. Rosie she didn't have the social skills to pull that off. Well, I mean, she did because she was herself, right? But not the kind, it put that crowd off her sort of what they considered coarse and unsophisticated outlook and ways and her manner of speech, etc. So as he becomes more successful, his marriage to Rosie becomes more strained. She is, I mentioned, a free spirit. So, she could be, I guess maybe you could say she could be promiscuous. I didn't really see her that way. I felt like she was just the type of person that if she felt connected to someone and she wanted to have, intimacy with that person, she did it, and it didn't bother her a bit. It didn't matter to her necessarily that she was, married, and this sort of social constriction that is placed on that. She didn't really recognize that at all. And so, over the course of time, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, since the book starts out and we know he has a second wife, that, this marriage ends. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the story of Rosie, as we discover through the novel. So that's super interesting to me. So I mentioned about the aspect of it being a social satire of England's writing community. I believe from what I read, Maugham actually patterned the character of Driffield, although he denied it, although I think the consensus is today that he did indeed model the character of Driffield on the real-life author Thomas Hardy. And Thomas Hardy had just died when the book came out. So in the book, in Cakes and Ale, the famous author had just died, and his second wife wanted to create this biography. And in the book as well, the second wife is the one that wants to promote the sort of shining image of the great author. And so the wife of Thomas Hardy, the second wife of Thomas Hardy in real life, actually was so upset she commissioned someone to write a novel that was a rebuttal, which then Maugham took to court. And so it was this whole kind of drama around this book. And then the character of Keir is another author. Alroy Keir is a real life author called Hugh Walpole. And I believe that he recognized himself as this character, and he and Maugham had been friends for many, many years, but they fell out over this book, and I believe didn't speak again. I believe that was the end of that friendship. I mentioned about Rosie and sort of the character, how it's sort of a typical character of Maugham, and I think Somerset Maugham really liked writing these kind of characters, where you have a character that sees the world differently than the establishment, and so they are not afraid to live the life on their own terms. So we had Kitty Fane, in the Painted Veil. She things don't necessarily work out well for all the characters. I won't give that away. Check out that chat if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about the Painted Veil. But then we have Mildred in Of Human Bondage, another one that it sort of did not work out for. She did try to live life on her own terms. It did not work out for her. Isabel in The Razor's Edge, to a lesser extent Sophie, but Isabel was sort of the opposite, where she wanted that social approval, and that didn't work out for her either. And then those are all women characters, but then in The Moon and Sixpence, there was the character Charles Strickland, the artist, and he does live life on his own terms as well. And it works out, pretty well for him, I think. Not without, struggle, but that's the fun part about reading Maugham's works, I think, is these sort of real characters that you can really see as a real sort of person, and making decisions in life that are in some cases making decisions towards authenticity that others don't make, and what the consequences of that can be. And I just think that is so interesting. Okay, I think that's about all I want to say about Cakes and Ale. I did enjoy it a lot, and I'm glad I got another Somerset Maugham novel read. I have not picked out another one to read in the future. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know, because I would like to continue reading on Somerset Maugham. I just haven't picked one out. So let me know if you have any suggestions. My next chat, though, is going to change directions. I am going to chat about some science fiction. This is Translation State by Leckie, and I have finished this already, so I will have a chat on it coming up very soon. Until next time, take care.